My video presentation today is on tracks and how nature affects one's identity. In tracks, there's this recurring theme of nature and identity. And Davidson is saying, through immersing oneself in nature, one will begin to form values and skills that will stay with them. Because Davidson completely immersed herself in a rough environment, the Australian desert. But in doing so, she was able to quickly learn and keep skills that ultimately changed the way she viewed nature. And so my passage today is, throughout the trip, I had been gaining an awareness and an understanding of the earth as I learned how to depend upon it. She cuts to saying how she's been changed by nature. And so the next part of the quote is, my environment became an animate being of which I was a part. The context for this passage is Davidson is reflecting on her thoughts, like her thoughts throughout her trip, her journey. And her intention is to explain to the reader how she felt and those feelings how they've developed over the journey. And she describes how she's changed, including her improved recognition of patterns in nature, such as when she sees the connections between the animal tracks and the behavior of an animal. She knows as soon as she sees the tracks what the animal's behavior is. She knew about birds just by looking at them. She knew just as much about their actions as she did about their physical attributes. And she even describes to a part where if she looks at a set of beetle tracks, she can know where it's going and why just by looking at its footprints in the sand. She's fighting this idea that people think that the open space of the Australian desert is intimidating or frightening, and people would rather just live on the eastern seaboard. But instead, she believes it has a bunch of untapped potential and possibilities that could never be found in other places. And so, Davidson was forced to depend on this unforgiving desert through her laborious trip. She needed to understand how to best survive through the desert's harsh conditions, meaning she was able to read her environment well enough to know, oh, this is where I should stop. And she was also able to know her landscape well enough that she could navigate well through it and know which areas to avoid. Davidson quickly went from learning the rudimentary knowledge where with other people, with her friends, to knowing the ins and out of the flora and fauna of the desert. She described the knowledge that she learned, that she possessed, as apparent on a gut level. So not only did she know more overall now, but she could also learn much faster. If she saw a new plant, she would immediately recognize various traits of it. And she had a strong foundation on which she could learn to learn. Davidson mentions that in survival, that survival in the desert requires ones to blur the boundaries of what they believe to be precise, and that's how she's changed. Instead of trying to categorize everything, she realized that nature is an unordered, chaotic principle. Thank you.